My name is Clara. I'm 33 years old. And 3 weeks ago, I won the lottery. Millions. Not the kind of money where you can just pay off your bills and maybe buy a nice car.
No.
The kind of money that makes your heart stop when the bank app refreshes, the kind of money that makes strangers suddenly call you cousin, the kind of money that ruins people. But here's the part that would shock most people. I didn't tell anyone. Not my mother, not my father, not my sisters, not my so-called friends. Nobody. I kept my mouth shut. Because if there's one thing I know about people, especially family, it's that money doesn't actually change them. It just rips off the mask they've been wearing and shows you who they really are. And me? I wanted to see my family without their masks.
So I tested them.
The first person I went to was my mother. She's always been the queen of guilt trips, the kind of woman who can drop a comment sharp enough to slice your self-esteem in half, then act like she was just being honest. I walked into her kitchen, sat at her spotless counter, and asked for $200 to cover rent. 200. Not 2,000. Not 20,000. 200. She set her coffee down like I'd just asked her to hand over a limb. Then she said, "Clara, you're 33 years old. Don't you think it's embarrassing to still be asking me for money? Honestly, you've been nothing but a disappointment. I don't know what I did wrong raising you." That's the thing about my mom. She doesn't just say no. She slices you open, sprinkles salt in the wound, then pats herself on the back for being honest. I smiled, nodded, and thanked her anyway. But inside, I was laughing.
Really laughing.
Because while she was sitting there judging me, I had millions in my account. She had no idea the child she was calling a failure could buy her house 3 times over and still have cash to burn. Next was my sister Emily. She's 36, married, 2 kids, and the type who thinks every holiday gathering is her audition tape for a reality show. Her husband cheats, her kids are wild, and her house looks like a pottery barn threw up inside, but she acts like she's perfect. I called her and said, "Hey, I'm really short on groceries this week. Can you help me out with 100? She didn't even hesitate before sighing dramatically. "Clara, you're ridiculous. You've always been ridiculous. How do you expect to survive if you can't even afford food? You need to grow up. Honestly, maybe skipping a few meals would be good for you." She laughed. She actually laughed, like my supposed hunger was a punchline. I held my tongue, thanked her for nothing, and hung up. Dad was next. He's the kind of man who measures his worth in how many people he's stepped on. Love? Affection? Forget it. He believes emotions are for the weak, and his favorite word in the English language is useless. Still, I gave him a shot. I showed up at his house, sat in his tacky recliner, and told him my car had broken down. "Can you help me fix it?" I asked. He lowered his newspaper, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "Clara, you're useless. At your age, you should be helping me, not begging me. You'll never amount to anything if you can't handle your own problems. You're nothing but a burden." That word, useless, hit like a knife. But I smiled, stood, and walked out. I didn't even slam the door. I didn't need to. I knew one day, soon, I'd own everything he thought was his. And that's when it clicked. This wasn't just about testing them anymore. This was about revenge. I tested everyone.
Aunts.
Uncles. Cousins. Each time, I came with some small, desperate request. A few bucks for rent. Grocery money. Gas for my car. And every time, they dismissed me, mocked me, rolled their eyes. Every single one of them failed. Except one.
Sarah.
My cousin Sarah is 24, broke, and working double shifts at a diner just to stay afloat. When I told her I couldn't afford groceries, she didn't even pause. She showed up that same night with 2 paper bags. Store-brand cereal, generic bread, a carton of eggs. She handed it over and said, "I don't have much, but you won't go hungry on my watch." I hugged her, and for the first time since those winning numbers popped up, I felt tears sting my eyes. Sarah had almost nothing, but she gave anyway. Everyone else?
Dead to me.
That's when the game began. I sat in my apartment, laptop open, a glass of wine in my hand, and started digging. Property records. Business filings. Debt collectors. I wanted to know exactly where my family was weak, and oh, they were weak. Emily's husband? Buried in gambling debt. My mom? 3 months behind on her mortgage. My dad? Quietly hemorrhaging money into some failing investment he'd never admit was a mistake. And me? I was the shark circling the water, grinning with teeth sharp enough to shred them all. I didn't come at them directly. No, that would have been too easy. I bought up my mom's mortgage through a shell company. Suddenly, her loan servicer wasn't the friendly neighborhood bank anymore. It was me, hiding behind layers of paperwork. She had no idea her daughter, now, held the strings to the roof over her head. Emily's husband? I bought into the debt collection agency that owned his markers. Every time he missed a payment, my pockets got fatter. He thought he was dodging faceless suits, but really he was just feeding me. And my dad's failing investment? I bought controlling interest in the company he was pouring his money into. He thought he was clawing his way back to profit, but every move he made was under my thumb. Piece by piece, I built my revenge. Quietly, methodically, smiling to their faces while holding knives behind my back. And Sarah, the only one who helped me, I made sure she was taken care of. An anonymous check covered her rent. A mysterious scholarship cleared her student loans. A quiet deposit padded her savings account. She never knew it was me, but I saw her relief, and it was enough. The rest of them? They'd soon know what it meant to beg. I kept up appearances. Family dinners. Awkward phone calls. Holiday plans. I smiled, nodded, and let them talk down to me, roll their eyes, and whisper about how pathetic I was. Every insult was a spark feeding the fire I was building. And, oh, it was going to burn.
If this story reached you, drop your country or city in the comments. I'd love to see how far it's traveled. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe for more emotional, true-to-life stories just like this one.
They thought they had me figured out. The broke, desperate Clara. The one who could barely scrape by, the one they could laugh at over wine glasses and text about in their little family group chats. Poor Clara. I could almost hear them whisper. She's 33 and still begging for scraps. Thank God, we're not her. But here's the thing about being underestimated. It's the sharpest weapon in the drawer. They had no idea I was sharpening mine every single day. I tested more of them. Oh, I wasn't done. My Aunt Linda. She's the kind who always tells people she's brutally honest, when in reality, she's just brutal. I called her and said, Aunt Linda, my electricity bill is overdue, and they're about to shut me off. Can you help me cover it? She chuckled. Actually chuckled. Then she said, Clara, maybe a few nights in the dark will teach you responsibility. You know, when I was your age, I was already managing a household and raising 2 kids. You should be ashamed of yourself. I bit down so hard on my tongue, I tasted blood. Nights in the dark. If only she knew how brightly my future was about to glow. Then there was Uncle Rick. Now Rick has always been the loudmouth at family cookouts, the guy who thinks he's the life of the party, when really, he's just an obnoxious drunk. I asked him for $50. Just 50. I told him I needed gas to get to work. He leaned back in his chair, laughed until his beer nearly spilled, and said, Why don't you try walking, Clara? Might burn off some of that attitude. $50? Hell, my dog's worth more than that. I smiled. You're right, Uncle Rick. Thanks anyway. But in my head, I was already drafting his eulogy, financially speaking. Then came the cousins. I won't even bother naming them all, because they're basically clones of each other. Spoiled, smug, and useless. I sent out texts, subtle little cries for help. Not one reply came back with anything other than excuses, sarcasm, or silence. It was almost funny. Here I was, the millionaire in disguise, asking for crumbs, and my so-called blood couldn't be bothered. Except Sarah. Sweet, broke, overworked Sarah. She was the only one who showed up, groceries in hand, smile on her face. She reminded me that kindness still existed in the ashes of my family tree. But everyone else? They'd made their choice. And now it was my turn. I didn't move fast, though. No, I wanted this to be slow. Delicious. Like simmering a stew until the meat fell off the bone. I started small, buying things through shell companies, taking positions where they'd least expect it. My mother's mortgage, my sister's debts, my father's investments. I even went as far as digging into extended family. I pulled credit reports, business filings, even some public court records. The dirt was endless. Gambling debts, late taxes, missed alimony payments, secrets they thought would never surface. And all the while, I kept playing the fool. At dinners, I let them sneer at me. At birthdays, I let them whisper. At Thanksgiving, I listened as Emily joked that I'd probably bring paper plates instead of a dish, because that's all Clara can afford. They laughed. I laughed too. But inside, I was memorizing every word, engraving it onto the headstone of the empire I was building. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice, about balance, about teaching them that the person they dismissed, mocked, and spit on was the very one who held their fates in her hands. The more they pushed me down, the higher I was climbing. One night, I sat in my apartment with my laptop glowing, spreadsheets open, contracts lined up, and I realized I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't desperate. I wasn't the poor, pitiful Clara they thought I was. I was the storm, and they had no idea it was already on the horizon. You know what really hits harder than words? Silence. The way my phone would stay blank after I sent those carefully worded messages. Can anyone help me out until payday? Sent to the family group chat. Nothing. Hours later, Emily would post a photo of her new shoes. Dad would post some half-baked meme. Rick would brag about his grill. But not one of them would type my name. Not one of them would ask, "Are you okay?" That silence? It screamed louder than any insult. And yet it made me laugh. Really laugh. I'd sit on my couch, staring at their little green and gray bubbles, thinking, this is the family I almost trusted with my secret. These are the people who'd have eaten me alive if I'd handed them a taste of my winnings. I didn't just stop at testing them with money requests.
No.
I went further. Emotional tests. I called my mom one night, voice trembling, told her I was scared because my landlord was threatening eviction. She sighed, long and bored, then said, "Clara, I'm too tired for this. Maybe if you stopped chasing pipe dreams, you wouldn't always be in trouble. Call me when you grow up."
Click.
That was the night I deleted Mom from my favorites. Then came Dad. I pretended I was sick. Told him I'd been dizzy all week, that I might need help with groceries. He chuckled and said, "Maybe it's time you learn to take care of yourself. I've already given you enough chances." Enough chances. As if being born his daughter was some burden on him. I hung up the phone, walked to my mirror, and stared at myself. "Enough chances," I whispered.
He's right.
"You've had enough chances, Clara.
But now?
It's their turn to get tested." And that became my mantra. I doubled down. Nights spent studying investment strategies. Days spent quietly positioning myself where they'd least expect it. I bought pieces of businesses they didn't even know I knew about. I connected with lawyers, accountants, real estate agents, all under the radar. My money was moving like smoke through cracks in the walls, filling spaces unseen. Meanwhile, my family still thought I was a loser. At Christmas, Emily handed me a used candle. A used candle. The wick was black, the wax uneven. "I knew you'd appreciate this, Clara. It's all about recycling, right?" she smirked. Everyone laughed. I thanked her, smiling so sweetly they had no idea I was mentally measuring her downfall to the exact inch. But it wasn't just about proving them wrong anymore. It wasn't even about proving myself right. It was about making them feel every ounce of dismissal they'd shoved onto me. If cruelty was their language, I was about to become fluent. I remember the night I sat in my car outside my mom's house, watching the lights on in her kitchen. She was probably making tea, humming to herself, living her ordinary little life. And I thought, if only you knew, Mom. If only you knew that the daughter you brushed off could buy this whole street and throw you out by morning. The power wasn't intoxicating, it was clarifying. See, when people treat you like dirt, you start to believe you're dirt. But when the tables turn, and suddenly you're holding their mortgages, their debts, their futures in your hands, that's when you realize you were never dirt. You were the seed. And they'd just been pouring poison on you, hoping you'd never grow. Well, guess what? I grew. And I was about to spread roots so deep they'd never yank me out. By the end of part 1 of my little secret saga, every test had been run. Every mask had fallen. They'd shown me their true faces: cold, cruel, dismissive, selfish. Only Sarah had passed. The rest? Failures. And me? I was no longer the desperate Clara begging for help. I was Clara, 33, millionaire, storm on the horizon. They just didn't know yet. But they would. Oh, they would. My name is Clara, I'm 33 years old, and by the time I'd finished testing every last one of them, I knew exactly what I had to do. No more begging. No more pretending to be weak. No more giving them the benefit of the doubt. They showed me who they were. Now it was my turn to show them who I had become. I started with Emily, my darling sister, the one who called me a parasite, laughed about my shoes, handed me a half-burned candle for Christmas. Emily had a big secret, one she thought she buried, so deep no one would ever find it. Her dream life, her big house, her spotless Instagram feed, it was all built on credit. Stacked like a house of cards, one bad wind away from collapse. And guess what? I was the wind. I bought her debt. Quietly. Through an LLC with a name so generic she'd never trace it back to me. One morning, she woke up and got a letter. Her loans had been sold to a new servicer. That servicer was me. I could have demanded the full balance right then. I could have had her sobbing in days.
But no.
That wasn't my style. I wanted her to feel the pressure.
To squirm.
So I adjusted her terms. Tiny increases. Random fees. Just enough to make her sweat. And then, I waited. Next was Dad. The man who told me maybe it was time I learned to take care of myself. Funny thing about Dad, he fancied himself an investor. Always bragging about the next big thing he was throwing money into. Startups. Tech real estate. He thought he was clever. But Dad was predictable. Too predictable. So when his buddy offered him a can't-miss deal in commercial property, guess whose silent company bought the building next door?
Mine.
And when Dad invested, he didn't realize he was swimming in waters I already owned. It wasn't hard to push the current against him. A couple of zoning complications. A sudden spike in property taxes. Little nudges that made his investments sink while mine soared. Every dollar he lost, I made. And he had no idea. But Mom, oh, Mom. She thought she was untouchable. The queen bee. The one everyone else orbited. She had a mortgage she bragged about paying off early. Except she hadn't. There were liens she ignored, paperwork she shoved in drawers. I bought the paper on her house.
Slowly. Piece by piece.
And I sat there, smiling sweetly at family dinners, while legally, her castle was becoming my kingdom. And then there was Uncle Rick. God, I loved saving him for dessert. Remember how he told me his dog was worth more than me?
Cute.
Well, Rick had gambling debts. Big ones. Owed money to the kind of people who don't send polite reminders. I didn't have to do much, just bought the debt when it went up for sale. And then I became the collector. Imagine his face when the letters started coming, threatening repossession, foreclosure. From an office with my fingerprints all over it, though he'd never know. Piece by piece, I was wrapping my fingers around their throats. Not squeezing yet, just letting them feel the hand. And through all of this, I played dumb. Oh, that was the best part. I still showed up at dinners looking tired. I still let Emily mock me for not having a real job. I still nodded while Dad lectured me about responsibility. Meanwhile, I was moving pawns across the board. Checkmate was coming. But let me tell you the best part of revenge. It isn't just striking back. It's making them need you first. Making them crawl to the same person they spat on. Making them taste the bitterness of their own medicine. So I waited. Patient. Calculated. And then the cracks started to show. Emily called me one afternoon, her voice tight. Clara, you wouldn't happen to know anything about loan refinancing, would you? I nearly burst out laughing. But I held it in. Not really, Em. Why? Oh, It's nothing, she said quickly. Just something weird with my payments. Forget I asked.
Click.
I grinned so wide my cheeks hurt. Dad complained over dinner that his sure thing investment wasn't panning out. He swore the city was out to get him. Taxes, permits, inspections, it was all too much. I sipped my wine and murmured, "That's tough, Dad." And Rick? He started drinking harder. His wife whispered about financial troubles when she thought no one could hear. I heard. Oh, I heard. They were unraveling. And I was the one pulling the threads. The best part? They still thought I was the failure. The desperate, broke, single Clara who couldn't pay her bills. They had no idea I was the ghost in their machines, the shadow in their bank accounts, the reason their nights felt heavier. I wasn't just testing them anymore. I was teaching them, lesson by lesson, dollar by dollar. And the final exam? Oh, it was coming. But first, I wanted to watch them sweat. It didn't take long before the whispers turned into cries. Emily was the first to stumble. I could practically smell the fear in her voice when she called again. Not casual this time. Desperate. "Clara," she said, her voice wobbling. "Do you have a minute?
I
need some advice. My lender's being weird, and I swear my balance went up overnight. They're adding fees I don't understand. I tried calling, but they keep giving me the runaround. And, Clara, they're saying I might be in default soon. I don't know what to do." I let a silence hang, long and heavy. Then I sighed. "That sounds awful, Em. I wish I knew more about that stuff. Maybe try cutting back on your shopping? You've always been good at splurging." She didn't laugh. She sniffled. For the first time in her smug little life, Emily sounded small. I hung up and screamed with laughter. Then came Dad. He showed up at my apartment unannounced, his face red, sweat on his forehead. He'd never done that before. To him, visiting me was beneath him. "Clara, you gotta listen," he barked as soon as I opened the door. "The city's screwing me. They're changing the zoning laws. They're jacking up taxes. I'm bleeding money here. You studied some of this finance stuff in school, right? Help me out, for God's sake." I crossed my arms. "Funny, Dad. Last time I asked you for help, you told me maybe it was time I learned to take care of myself. Remember that?" His face froze. For a second, just a second, he knew. He knew what I was doing. But then he swallowed, shook his head, and growled. "This isn't the same, Clara. I'm your father." "And I'm your daughter," I said sweetly. "Guess we're both out of luck." And I shut the door in his face. That sound? That hollow thud of wood on wood? That was the sound of a throne collapsing. And Uncle Rick. Oh, Rick was drowning. Calls, letters, threats stacking higher than his liquor bottles. He called me at 2 a.m. once, slurring. "Clara, kiddo, you're good with money, right? I need a loan. Just a little one. Just to tide me over." I stared at the glowing screen in the dark, his name flashing, and I let it ring until it went silent. That was the beginning of the avalanche. Because once one fell, they all started falling. Bills they couldn't pay. Mortgages they couldn't cover. Investments rotting in their hands. And me? I was untouched, floating above them like a hawk watching mice scurry. But here's the thing about mice. When the walls close in, they panic. And when they panic, they turn on the one person they swore was beneath them.
Me.
My phone lit up one Friday afternoon, buzzing and buzzing. Emily.
Mom. Dad. Rick.
Cousins I hadn't heard from in years. They all called, texts pouring in, one after the other. "Clara, please call me back. Clara, we need to talk. It's urgent. Clara, answer the damn phone. Clara, this is family business. You can't ignore us." I didn't pick up. I sat on my couch with a glass of wine, watching the numbers climb. 5 missed calls. 12 missed calls. 23. By midnight? 50. 50 missed calls. I laughed so hard, I nearly choked. The same people who couldn't be bothered to loan me $50 were now tripping over themselves to beg me for thousands. The irony was so thick I could spread it on toast. I snapped a screenshot of my call log, 50 glowing red notifications, and saved it. A trophy.
Proof.
The day the tide turned. I finally answered one. Just one. My mother's. Her voice was raw, frantic. Clara, thank God, you finally picked up. We need you. Everything's falling apart. Emily's about to lose her house. Your father's investments are tanking. Rick. Oh God. Rick is being threatened by loan sharks. Clara, you have to help us. I sip my wine. That's interesting. Because when I asked for help, you told me you were too tired to deal with me. Remember? Clara, this isn't the same. It's exactly the same. I cut her off. But don't worry, Mom. I'll think about it. And then I hung up. I didn't need drugs. I didn't need champagne. That moment, that high, it was pure, uncut ecstasy. They'd given me nothing but scorn. And now, for the first time in their lives, they needed me. And I was going to let them sweat, let them burn, let them crawl across glass before I even considered throwing them a rope. Because revenge isn't about the strike. It's about the wait. And oh, how I could wait. 50 missed calls. That number still rang in my head like a church bell. 50 times they begged for me. 50 times they clawed at the one they once spat on. It was beautiful. But I wasn't satisfied. Not yet. I didn't just want them desperate. I wanted them ruined. I wanted them to look at me and see the shadow of every cruel word they'd ever said. So I sharpened my knives. Emily was first on my chopping block. She was already floundering with those bloated loans I'd wrapped around her throat. But I wasn't done. Oh no. I wanted her pride gutted. Her identity shredded. She loved her image. The Instagram perfect life. The fake brunches. The designer bags she couldn't afford. The endless captions about hustle culture, while she paid everything on credit. I leaked. Quietly, anonymously. Screenshots of her overdue notices, her balances, her bounced payments. I fed them into little online groups, sent them to people who'd talk, whispered in ears that loved gossip. Within weeks, whispers became rumors. Rumors became truths. Emily's flawless mask cracked under the weight of judgment. Suddenly, friends weren't inviting her to outings. Her feed was quieter, likes shrinking by the day. And she knew someone had spilled her perfect little secret. She called me, sobbing. Clara, I don't know who's doing this, but someone's spreading lies about me. I swear, I'm not broke. I almost felt bad. Almost. But then I remembered the used candle. Emily, I said, voice dripping with false sympathy, people only spread lies when there's smoke. Maybe you should look at what you've set on fire.
Click.
One down. Dad was next. His investments were bleeding, but he still strutted like a king. That couldn't stand. I reached deeper. Through my shell companies, I started offering buyouts of the very projects he'd sunk his money into.
He didn't know it was me.
To him, it looked like his partners were turning on him, selling shares, cashing out. Suddenly, he wasn't the sharp investor. He was the fool. His empire crumbled as he tried to patch holes in a sinking ship. And I was the water filling it faster. He came to me again, this time quieter. Clara, sweetheart, you're good with numbers. Maybe you could take a look at some of these contracts for me. I stared at him, the man who once said, enough chances, Clara. So I smiled sweetly and said, sorry, Dad. I wouldn't want to make things worse. He looked at me then, really looked at me like maybe he finally saw who I was becoming. And I let him. Because the truth was simple. I wasn't his daughter anymore. I was his reckoning. And then Uncle Rick. The debt I'd bought was crushing him. But I didn't want him just broke. I wanted him humiliated. So I called in one of his notes.
Publicly.
Filed the paperwork so it showed up in the local court docket. Suddenly, his friends, his neighbors, his poker buddies, they all knew. The man who bragged about his grill, his car, his vacations? Exposed as a broke fraud. He confronted me at a family dinner. Red-faced, drunk, spit flying. Clara, you little bitch. I know this is you. I know you're behind this. The room went silent. Everyone stared. I took a sip of water, set the glass down, and leaned in close. Rick, I whispered, just loud enough for everyone to hear, my dog's worth more than you. The room gasped. He lunged. Dad held him back. And me? I just sat there, calm as a queen on her throne, watching his world shatter. Piece by piece, I was dismantling them. And still, they didn't know the half of it. Because while they scrambled, while they begged, while they fought each other in desperation, I was buying more, collecting more, setting up the final act they'd never see coming. The power wasn't just in having money. It was in watching them realize they were powerless against me. And trust me, I wasn't done yet. Revenge isn't a single blow. It's a symphony. Every note rising, every instrument swelling until the final crash. And me? I was the conductor. Emily had already lost her perfect mask. She was a social ghost now, hiding behind excuses while the world whispered. But I wasn't finished with her. Not yet. She had a job, marketing director for some boutique agency. She loved bragging about it, posting selfies in the office with captions like "Boss Life." But I knew the truth. She wasn't the boss. She wasn't even respected. She was tolerated. A fraud in designer heels.
So I dug.
Quietly, patiently. And oh, did I find something? Expense reports. Inflated numbers. A couple of creative reimbursements she thought no one would notice. I packaged it. Anonymously, of course. Slid it right onto her boss's desk. 2 weeks later, Emily was fired. She called me, voice raw from crying. "Clara, they said I stole. You believe me, right?" "You know I wouldn't." I bit my lip to keep from laughing. "Of course, Sam. I believe you."
Click.
The silence after that call? Music. Then came Dad. The man who strutted, who preached, who claimed to be the wise patriarch. He was unraveling, and I wanted everyone to see it. So, I let a few documents slip. Investment records. Mismanagement. His sure things turning into money pits. I fed them to the right people, people in his business circle who loved nothing more than tearing down a rival. It didn't take long. Whispers turned into headlines. His partners bailed. His reputation tanked. And suddenly, Dad wasn't the king anymore. He was the jester, the fool who got played. He stormed into my apartment again, angrier this time. "Clara, this is you. I don't know how, but this is you. You've been sabotaging me, haven't you?" I tilted my head, feigning innocence. "Why would I do that, Dad? You're my father. I'd never sabotage you." He shook, fists clenched, veins popping in his neck. But he couldn't prove a thing. That was the beauty of it. I didn't need to fight him. I just needed to watch him crumble under the weight of his own collapse. And then Rick. Oh, sweet, drunken Rick. He was already drowning, but I wanted spectacle. So I twisted the knife. I arranged for his repossession to happen in broad daylight. Middle of the neighborhood, his shiny truck yanked away, while his neighbors watched. The man who once mocked me for walking now stood, red-faced and screaming, as his pride and joy was hauled off. I drove by, slow, windows down. He saw me. Our eyes met. He knew. I smiled. And in that moment, he understood exactly who I had become. But here's the thing. The deeper I cut, the more addictive it became. Their pain wasn't just revenge anymore, it was fuel. Every tear, every scream, every desperate call, they fed me. And my phone? God, my phone was a graveyard of their pleas. Messages stacked on messages. Mom begging for just a loan. Dad demanding family loyalty. Emily crying that she couldn't make rent. Rick cursing me, threatening me, then begging again in the same breath. I saved every voicemail, every text, every call log. Proof. Receipts. My private museum of their downfall. And through it all, the sweetest irony was this. Sarah, the only one who ever helped me, never asked me for a dime. She called just to check in to see how I was doing. She brought me coffee, sat with me when she thought I was struggling, and never once asked for anything in return. Her kindness was a lighthouse in the storm I was unleashing. A reminder that I wasn't doing this to everyone, just to the ones who earned it. But the rest of them? They weren't just failing. They were falling, crashing, imploding. And I was the silent hand pushing them off the edge. Part 3 wasn't the finale. Not yet. But it was the point of no return. By now, their lives weren't just cracking, they were shattering. And still, none of them knew the truth. Not yet. But soon. Oh, so soon. My name is Clara. I'm 33 years old. And by now, my family was circling the drain, thanks to me. They didn't know it yet, of course. To them, I was still the lazy, useless daughter, the disappointment, the spare wheel. But in reality, I was their executioner. Every broken reputation, every lost dollar, every tear-soaked voicemail, my doing. And now it was time to end the game. See, revenge isn't satisfying if it drags forever. No, the beauty of revenge is in the climax. That one moment when all the masks drop, when the truth lands like a grenade, and the world you've built around them explodes. I had been patient. I had played my cards carefully.
But now?
Now I was ready to flip the table. It started with invitations. Sarah thought I was crazy when I told her, "Clara, you want to throw a party for them? After everything?" I grinned. Not a party, Sarah. A performance. So, I sent out invitations. Formal ones, fancy script, golden edges. I called it a family appreciation dinner. A little thank you to the people who had shaped me. And oh, they came running. Dad showed up in a suit 2 sizes too big. He'd lost weight, stress eating away at him. Emily plastered on a smile that cracked every few seconds, her hands shaking from too much cheap wine. Rick arrived late, reeking of beer, his eyes bloodshot from another sleepless night. They came because they thought it was hope. They came because in the middle of their chaos they still believed maybe, just maybe, Clara had money. Clara had answers. Clara would finally step up. Fools. The dinner was at a downtown hotel ballroom. Crystal lights, soft music, waiters in tuxedos. I made sure it screamed success. Because the contrast was everything. I stood at the front, microphone in hand, the spotlight warming my skin. Sarah sat at a table near the front, her eyes wide with nervous anticipation. "Good evening," I began, my voice steady, sharp. "My name is Clara, I'm 33 years old, and tonight, I have something to share with you."
They leaned in, hungry, desperate.
2 years ago, I continued, I won the lottery. Millions. Enough to change my life forever. The gasp was collective. Forks froze. Glasses clinked as hands trembled. "But here's the twist," I said, smiling like a wolf. "I didn't tell anyone. Not because I was scared, but because I wanted to know who my family really was. I wanted to test you. I wanted to see, when I had nothing, who would stand by me." I let the silence stretch. I watched their faces pale, their jaws clench, their eyes dart nervously. And guess what? I leaned closer to the mic. Out of all of you, only one person passed. Only one person offered me a hand when I needed it. I turned, gesturing toward Sarah. Her. The room swiveled. Sarah's face flushed red, tears brimming in her eyes. Sarah gave me kindness without knowing I had millions. She gave me compassion when the rest of you gave me cruelty. I paused, staring at them, my voice dropping to a razor's edge. She treated me like family when none of you did. Dad stood, his voice cracking. "Clara, sweetheart, we didn't know." I laughed.
Hard. Cold.
"Didn't know? You didn't care. You didn't care when I begged for help. You didn't care when I was drowning. You looked at me and saw dead weight. And now, you suddenly remember you're my family?" Emily tried next. "Clara, please, I was just stressed, I didn't mean." I cut her off, my tone venom. "You gave me a used candle, Emily. A used candle. You called me pathetic to my face. Don't you dare rewrite history." Rick slammed his fist on the table, slurring, "You think you're better than us now? Just because you got lucky?" I smiled.
"No, Rick.
I don't think I'm better. I know I'm better. Because while you were drinking, while you were mocking me, I was building an empire right under your noses. And now? Now you're nothing but the ashes under my shoes." The silence that followed was electric. Heavy. Suffocating. And then, almost like a cherry on top, my phone buzzed. 50 missed calls. Dad, Emily, Rick. All begging me, blowing up my line like moths to a flame. I held up the screen so they could see. 50 times you called me. 50 times you begged. And 50 times I let it ring.
Because that's what you did to me.
You let me ring. You let me beg. And you let me suffer. I tossed the phone onto the table, the sound echoing through the room. And then I ended it. From this moment forward, we are not family. You're not my blood. You're not my responsibility. You're nothing to me. Sarah is my family now. Sarah is the only one who matters. And the rest of you? I paused, smiling cruelly. You'll spend the rest of your lives remembering that when Clara finally had it all, you had nothing. Not even me. The room cracked. Emily sobbed. Dad sat down broken. Rick cursed until security dragged him out. And me? I walked off that stage with Sarah at my side, never once looking back. Because revenge wasn't just served. It was devoured. Walking out of that ballroom felt like stepping out of a cage I had been locked in for 33 years. The air was lighter, sweeter, almost electric on my skin. Sarah clutched my arm, her voice shaking. Clara, that was savage. I laughed, a sharp, wild sound. They wanted savage, Sarah. They bred savage when they turned their backs on me. Tonight was just the harvest. But I wasn't done.
Oh no.
That dinner was only the beginning of the finale. The truth had been revealed, yes, but what's a reveal without aftermath? Without the fallout that leaves scars too deep to heal? The next morning I made sure the whole world knew. Remember those voicemails, those texts, those 50 missed calls? I compiled them, edited them, packaged them into a documentary-style reel titled When Family Fails. And then I paid for placement. Prime slots. Trending pages. Media circuits. Within 24 hours, it was everywhere. Millions watched as my father begged, as Emily cried, as Rick screamed. Millions saw me narrate over their desperation, calmly explaining how I'd tested my family after secretly winning millions, and how only one person had passed. The internet ate it up. Queen Clara. Savage lottery winner. Memes, edits, TikToks, they couldn't get enough. And my family? They couldn't walk outside without hearing laughter, without feeling eyes on them, without being reminded that they failed. Dad lost the last of his partners. No one wanted to touch a man who had been exposed as greedy, hypocritical, and pathetic in front of the entire world. His name was ruined, his empire nothing more than rubble. Emily?
Jobless. Broke.
Her friends gone, her reputation shredded. Every time she tried to crawl back online, the comments dragged her back down. She became the punchline she once thought I was.
Rick?
Arrested. Drunk and disorderly, bar fights, DUIs. He spiraled fast once he realized his world would never recover. And when he tried to blame me, nobody listened. Nobody cared. He was just another washed-up failure screaming into the void. The 50 missed calls were only the beginning. Now it was thousands. Thousands of desperate attempts to reach me. Letters. Emails. Even handwritten notes slipped under my door. I ignored every single one. Because here's the thing. Revenge isn't about closure. Revenge is about making them live in the wreckage of what they built. And, oh, did they live in it? But Sarah? Sweet, kind, beautiful Sarah? She flourished. I made her my partner, my co-owner, the face of my new ventures. While the others drowned, Sarah rose higher. Together, we bought homes, built businesses, traveled the world. She never asked for more, but I gave it anyway. Because she earned it. One night, as we sat on the balcony of a penthouse overlooking the city, Sarah turned to me and whispered, "Clara, why didn't you just walk away? Why not just enjoy the money and forget them?" I sipped my wine, watching the skyline glitter. Because walking away is mercy. And mercy is something they never gave me. She nodded, understanding. Because Sarah, unlike the rest, never judged me. She just stood beside me, always. And that was the point. Revenge wasn't just about destroying them. It was about choosing who to lift up. choosing who deserved to stand in my light. My family had chosen cruelty. Sarah had chosen kindness.
And
Now, every time Dad stared at his empty accounts, every time Emily scrolled through comments mocking her, every time Rick woke up in a cell, they all remembered the same thing. Clara won. Clara had the last laugh. Clara was the storm they created, and the storm that drowned them. I'm 33 years old. My name is Clara, and I tested my family with millions. They failed. Only one person passed. And because of that, the rest of them will spend the rest of their lives with one truth echoing in their heads. They could have had everything, but now they have nothing. Only missed calls. Only silence. And me, I have everything.